19th, 2016, and I will call the Wright County Board meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes of April 12th.
Mr. Chair, I will move minutes from last week, last week.
I will second it. Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. The agenda.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'd like to add an item to my agenda. It's to recognize the retirement of an employee in my office.
Okay. So you just want to do that in 9:10 time then, Bob?
Yep.
Okay, we'll put that item number 4.
Then, Mr. Chair, I had one small item. If we could remove the Personnel Committee minutes under items for consideration A. Those are for the Human Services Board and made it on this one by error.
Okay, Personnel Committee minutes will be removed. And while we're at it, you're going to take the Building Committee? No. Mark and Chris, you have Ways and Means when you get there? So we got some guests in the hallway that are going to be coming in at 9:06, it looks like, Joe, sounds like? I hope so. Okay. Well, I'm hearing folks out there, and I'm not sure what else they'd be here for, so.
Mr. Chair, with those changes, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, with the 2 additions. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. The consent agenda, any items to remove for further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I'd like to pull, well, I got one question on the audit report. So I don't know if we just want to,
Why don't you go ahead and move A through H minus D then?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Deline, second by Burrell to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the auditor treasurer's item. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Page 6, Department 100, the Anoka County Sheriff is on there. And under other general government for the forensic lab.
That was about a couple weeks ago.
And I think we've just approved that recently on the, in the county attorneys and also in the sheriffs, because that's where that goes into their budget. So I'm not sure what had happened, and Bob's aware of it.
All right, so Commissioners, if I could ask you to approve the claim listing with the correction of moving the Anoka County Sheriff's Forensic Lab to the budget line items in the sheriff and the attorney's office. And I'll make sure that it's not a duplicate payment. I'm wondering if we paid the February a little bit later, but I'll make sure we're not going to double pay this. But the coding of this definitely will change out of 100 and to the sheriff and the attorney's office.
Yeah, I know, I have seen it coming through on the county attorneys and the sheriffs, so.
And that is where the budget is, so.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to have a duplicate payment and pay twice as much as the services we use, would we?
No.
I'm glad some people get the irony of that statement.
Pat, tell me how you really feel about it.
Anyone else, anyone else?
I'll make a motion to approve the claims less the Anoka County Sheriff's.
Is there a motion by Deliden, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Potter, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Deliden, if it is not a duplicate payment, do you want me to pay it, or do you want me to just bring it back next Tuesday?
No, I mean, if it's not a duplicate payment, I mean, it can be paid.
All right, so you want to approve the claims listing as presented unless the Anoka County is a duplicate, now I'll pull it.
And so long as it gets put into the proper
Right.
areas.
And I'll correct the coding of it.
So I'll amend my motion.
Okay, so everybody's still expecting me to sign the list of bills here then, correct?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, here. 9:03, Adam Tagaro, IT Director. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to introduce a couple of new IT staff members this morning. The first introduction will be Scott Larson. He is our records management analyst, recently hired, and he has spent the majority of his career in the Air Force and managing records on their base there. Scott, say a few words.
I'm just happy to be here, and I am more than willing to answer any questions anyone has about records on IT.
Has Adam got enough to keep you busy?
Adam and everyone else.
I think so.
How long have you been here so far? 2 weeks?
3.5 weeks, I believe.
3.5 weeks? And so you got, what, another half week before you get everything all solved?
Yes. He's got till the end of the day. No, one of the first things that Scott's done is look at our records retention schedule, which was last updated in 2000, I believe. So getting that kind of up to date is one of the big projects here, because our documents and our data has changed dramatically in the last 16 years. So we're definitely keeping him busy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, welcome, Wright.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to working for the Wright County.
Thank you. And next up, I've got Mr. Brian Malinsky, our new Senior Systems Engineer. Brian comes to us from Carver County recently. Before that, he was at Wright County, so it's kind of a full circle. We brought him back in-house.
Commissioners, thanks for bringing me back. Happy to be here, and I hope to contribute my knowledge to the county as much as possible.
All right.
Yeah, welcome
Glad you
back.
came
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back to working for the Wright County again.
Right.
Now the stars have realigned for you. You'll be fine from here on in.
Thanks for coming in this morning. Sheriff Hagerty, are you still waiting for some folks, or, so just raise your hand when you're ready, and then we'll get you in, okay? I suggest you do it prior to the discussion on solar panels, though. Or you may be here a while. Down to 9:10, Bob Hebel. Good morning again, Bob.
Hey, good morning, Board. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the plat in Corunna Township called the Peterson Farm. All the proper signatures are in place. The plat is in the back office for the chair and coordinator Kelly to sign.
I'll make a motion to approve the plat.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Wright, second by Commissioner Burrell. Any further discussion? Is that a resolution in here? I'm trying to,
That's Don Farr, that's Steve Berg.
so not a resolution?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
For the second item on the agenda was to approve the committee of the whole, the ditch committee of the whole minutes from March 28th. The agenda does say County Ditch 31, but I believe there were multiple ditches
Yeah.
talked about at that time. So it's just the ditch committee of the whole minutes from August 28th, or March 28th.
I guess some of these ditches I'm not that familiar with, but I'm not sure if anyone that was good and familiar with them made sure that they're accurate relative to some of the descriptions here.
There was one that we decided to proceed with, if I remember correctly. Which one was that, Charlie? Do you remember?
That was ditch 18.
It was in Chris's district, I
I
believe.
thought it was 18.
Was it 18?
That sounds right, 18.
I think so.
Okay, so once this is approved, then we'll be moving forward with just that one, correct?
Mr. Chair, that was the one that was not a contractor, but works for a contractor that's done that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Question.
That was the very first one we talked about.
Was, yeah. In French Lake.
And that was the only action one as far as I recall.
Yeah, the other ones are still pending.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the, committee of the whole regarding, different county ditches.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Blyden, second by Commissioner Houston. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Board, the third item on the agenda is to approve the March revenue expenditure guideline. Those should have been emailed out to you. There's nothing more for me to draw your attention to in the first quarter of the year. We are getting closer to being right on target. So,
Yeah, and that, Mr. Chair, that has to do with a lot of the dues, subscription, things come right at us early in the year, and it takes a while for it all to catch up and,
I'll make a motion to approve March revenue expenditure budget reports.
I'll second that.
Motion by Blyden, second by Powell. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Board, thank you for allowing me to petition on an item. Denise McCullough in my office, she's my chief deputy. She's been with Wright County for 28 years. She did not want a big fanfare, but I do want to acknowledge the retirement of Denise McCullough. Denise is an asset to Wright County. She's an asset to Minnesota. She's been involved with all sorts of committees, helped steering where we're going with our tax programs. She's going to be sorely missed, but she did not want a big fanfare, so I promised her I would not do that, but since I'm taking the liberty to bring this up now, I wish she was here so you could acknowledge her retirement.
Bob, I'd like to add the business manager at the city of Monticello. I had seen him a couple weeks ago, and he had heard that Denise was leaving, and he said that that's going to be a huge loss, that she was, did a nice job working with the city on stuff, as you mentioned, relative to taxes and those sorts of things.
When is her last day?
This Thursday.
This Thursday.
Now, on the brighter side of this, I do have Tammy Veit here in my office, or here with me. I won't be here next Tuesday, so I want her to see what it was like to come down here. So I'm trying to load up the agenda items for her next Tuesday. But Tammy has accepted the chief deputy's position. She's worked closely with Denise and worked closely with our municipality. So I think where Denise excelled, Tammy's been involved with it. So I think we're going to blend in right away. So.
Well, good. Congratulations or condolences, I'm not quite sure.
And we wish Denise a wonderful retirement.
Yes. And I do want to acknowledge that she had 13 years of service before leaving us to go work with the tax vendor for 11 months. And
You worked with where?
She went to ACS, which is the support for our Xerox tax program. So she worked here 13 years, left for 11 months, came back and has completed 15 consecutive years. So really, Denise has served 28 years here at Wright County. So I think she should be recognized for that.
And you couldn't get her down here for a picture.
Nope. Right, Tammy? We couldn't drag her, we couldn't.
So you couldn't get Denise on a stick, we could just hold up a picture of her?
Okay. Well, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Virgil Hawkins, good morning, Virgil.
Good morning, Chairman Swatsky and Board of Commissioners. This morning I have two items for your consideration, and I'm happy to say that the trend of lower bids is continuing. The first item is we're requesting to award a bid for Highway 39 turn lane improvements in Otsego. These are two intersections at 39 and Page and 39 and Odine. The bids came in, the low bid by hard drives was 15% under estimate. So we're recommending award contract 1604 to hard drives in the amount of $139,639.88.
Virgil, where are these turn lanes all at then?
Two intersections in Otsego, Highway 39 and Odine, and Highway 39 and Page Avenue.
Okay.
Odine is the one that used to be County Road 37, that turned into 99, now it's just Odine.
There's been a number of accidents in those.
This is safety.
And hopefully this is going to solve some of the problems, There's, I don't recall the traffic count, but the traffic count it was close to 14,000.
It was about 14,000 cars a day on Highway 39, and there's a significant number of rear-end collisions that can be solved by adding left turn lanes.
So hopefully this is going to help solve those issues, although I know the sheriff's department is also working on the inattentive driving issues or texting while driving. So hopefully between those two items, it's going to solve some problems. So I'll make a motion to approve this.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner DeWine and second by Commissioner Potter to approve
Project number CP 86-39-16.
and we don't have a specific, again, there's no resolution here, just a motion, okay? Just a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. The second item for your consideration is awarding the bid for the Highway 35 flood control project to Landwehr Construction. It's contract 1602, and we recommend award in the amount of $648,313.09.
Another one substantially below.
This was 22% under our estimate.
Yeah, amazing.
Say, Virgil, I got a question. This is Will Swamp, right? And I thought, I know Charlie brought it up, and we heard about it again the other night at the Township Officers Meeting, but when the board met last time, did we talk at all? I mean, I know we talked about it, but did we kind of suggest that you do some preliminary research as far as the...
We did that. We looked
the
at
things,
that.
and what did you find out?
Well, the ditch that's there from the south side of Highway 35, and the ditch goes to Highway 7, it's 1,500 feet long, and there's 0.7 tenths of fall in that, so it's essentially flat. And the first 340 feet is in a protected wetland, and the rest of the length of the ditch is on private property. So even if we did have that cleaned out, it wouldn't provide any relief at all.
Or any, I presume it would provide some, but you're just thinking inches.
Right, it's essentially flat.
Okay.
And that is an old lake. It's technically called Wolf Lake.
But
it is
right
a
now,
protected wetland.
right now, because there used to be a ditch there years ago.
There is a
Now,
ditch.
It's all silted in, you might have 4 or 5 feet of silt, and if you cleaned that out, it would lower the water down, 4 or
Well,
5
it
feet.
still wouldn't, the elevation of the pipe entering and the elevation of the pipe leaving under 7 is essentially the same elevation, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
provide any...
But still, that would keep the water level at the same, like, the water level at Highway 35 right now is substantially higher than that culvert over on 7, isn't it?
No, not right now.
So it's down level with
It's
it
down as low as
already?
it can be according to the culvert elevation.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve and accept the bids for project 86-35-161 through Landwehr Construction in the amount of $648,313.09.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Houston. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thanks, Virgil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have the resolution.
A little ahead of Steve here. Why don't we, keep getting ahead here.
Building committee?
Yeah, Mark, could you please do the building committee for us, please?
If I can find it.
I have to flag everything, otherwise I can be fumbling around trying to find out.
All right, building committee met on April 13th. Members present were Swatsky for Potter, Lloyd, myself, and Kelly. Others present were Dahl, Hatfield, Tagaro, Virgin, and Corey Meyer, consulting engineer with Emmanuelson Faudis. Item number 1 was exterior lighting retrofit project. our next steps. We did a study and had an engineering firm to come in and look at all of our outside lighting and converting them all to LEDs in the parking lots, on the buildings for courthouse building, human services building, and the historical building. There was some discussion utilizing some motion sensors in a few different applications. I got an email and that has been done. Our next is to proceed with the preparation of the RFP with those alternatives as presented. And then once that's prepared, it should be placed on the website and contacts will be made with local vendors. So there'll be a couple of different options for some of the LED lights. There's a huge rebate, which is one of the reasons, because of the confusion nature of it, is one of the reasons we hired an engineer to help us with this. All the rebates will pay for the engineers and then some. Item number 2 is the PA system. Dahl informed the committee that they're having some issues with the PA system in this building. And each building has its own separate system, which works over the phone system. There are some issues where they're not working as they should be. They've reached out to a company, and we reported a price for hardware and software of $26,758. And to add an automatic weather module, the system would increase cost by $2,000. It was suggested this could be a CIP budget item in the future. And it was noted the system they're currently proposing, the same system that is being installed in the new Public Works facility. Recommendation, the committee requested that the matter be explored further. Item 3, the IT expansion, final budget. To go, updated the committee on the IT expansion project. To date, you have estimates for about the expansion is $32,000, has nothing to do with the furniture. That's going to be required for the expansion. One thing that's holding it up right now is the redoing of the restrooms into a handicap accessible. And how much of that's going to be taken up in the existing IT area, or in the new IT area. Recommendations, information only, will bring back to committee on April 27th if all additional information is available. Item 4, county building standards. The material and the colors that we are currently using in our cubes is no longer available, or is actually more expensive. So they looked at providing a different colors and to no longer utilize wallpaper and just go with paint in all the different areas. Again, that was information only. And then there was an update on the past project costs for item number 5, showing that what our costs have been up to date so far from the 2015-2016 budget. Again, information only. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the one recommendation to proceed with the RFP for the exterior lighting retrofit project.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Glyden.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Sheriff Hagerty, good morning.
Good morning, Board Chair. Thanks for the opportunity. It's my privilege to recognize Sergeant Mike Laurent, who trained me and still a work in progress, but several years ago. Mike started his career with Wright County on May 1st, 1980. He's one of only 8 deputies remaining hired by Sheriff Darrell Wolf. Mike was a staple in the city of Delano for 11 years, working overnights and training in new deputies, including me. On August 28th of 1991, Sheriff Don Hozempa promoted Mike to patrol sergeant. Mike handled internal affairs investigations and was instrumental in leading the Sheriff's Office Emergency Response Team for many years. He also served as training officer and has performed employee background investigations, conducting over 1,000 such backgrounds since June of 1998. My guess is he's a leader in the state with that, and the quality people that we have in our office, a lot of it is attributable to Sergeant Laurent. Mike understands the importance of fitness. He designed and built workout facilities in the government center and the law enforcement center. And to the taxpayers, that is used, the equipment we have is used from vending proceeds that the inmates supply. He's one of few who probably has the same belt size now as when he began his career. So I stopped at Clearwater Nelson Brothers today and found the biggest roll I could get. So Mike, you'll also get a plaque, but you can eat this a little bit later.
I'll share it with everybody.
I'm sure. Mike's always been a great cop, in tune and effective in the communities he served. If you're down in Delano, I'll be down at the chamber on Thursday speaking. Gabe, probably be a good story for you, because they still talk about Sergeant Laurent working down in Delano. Really was an asset. He's been reliable and dependable. It was my fault he wasn't here at 9:05. I told him 10. And he and his professionalism will be missed. Mike, we have a plaque for you presented to Sergeant Mike Laurent for over 36 years of service with the Wright County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. I didn't come prepared for a speech. That's not one of my better points. I do want to thank the county board and all previous county boards and the previous 4 sheriffs, one, of course, who's passed away, for everything that, came with my career. I want to thank especially Sheriff Haggerty, for all the years of service he's given me and helped me through a lot of things. And can't say enough about the good citizens of the county. It's been a great job. My uncle was a Los Angeles police officer for 45 years, but I wasn't going to try and break that. He was 25 years on the patrol division and 20 years in LA PD homicide. You can imagine that job. But that was my inspiration for getting into law enforcement. And again, I want to thank everybody for everything that my career contained.
So does this mean that your training of Sheriff Haggerty is done now?
It didn't sound like that. It didn't sound like that. I think you can't retire yet.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Can we get a photo with you and the board and Sheriff Haggerty?
Thanks, Sergeant Mike.
Can we get a photo, Sheriff Haggerty? If Ed could do the honors for us. Well, perhaps you 2 in the center.
Yeah, you guys in the center.
2 and 3 on each side. We should get Don Schmidt up here too. He's pretty cool. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Now, who's going to train you now?
So what are your plans in retirement?
Well, I plan on a little bit of travel, a little bit of home improvement projects, especially during the summer. Who knows after that? No big plans.
Yep, some fun.
Well, congratulations, Mike. Thanks again. Thanks for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for
It wasn't your fault. The sheriff should be apologizing for
He
that.
did.
Steve Bird. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Board Chair and Board of Commissioners. Well, back in July of 2014, I came to you with a grant proposal for renewing actually, the hazardous mitigation plan for the county. Since that time, we've finished the plan. It was sent to the state of Minnesota. And from there, after their review and approval of it, it was sent to FEMA for their review. They have now completed that review and passed our plan and approved it. The next step is for you to approve that plan by resolution. And I sent you a copy of that plan, the electronic copy of that plan for your review. And if you have any questions about that, I could answer those, or otherwise we'll need that approval. Once we get the approval from the board, that'll be sent back to FEMA, that information and documentation, and then they'll approve it and send it back, and then we'll finalize the plan. We'll get our final payments from the grant at that time.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the county all-hazard mitigation plan.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Delyden. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote. Commissioner Burrell?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Resolution carries unanimous. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for all your work. That's a lot of work.
That was a lot of work.
Bob, so do we have actually bids that were coming in sealed this morning? Is that what it's a bid opening, so, and what was the date and the time and location of where the sealed bids were going to be, right here at 9:30, or?
Yeah, we were to have received the bids by 9:30.
Okay, so with that being said, then at this time we will close the bidding process for the joint ditch 14 bids. If somebody comes in at this point after right now, they're late.
Laura, are there any other bids here?
Has anybody got one in the room that they're holding in their hand? No?
So board, today is just to open up the bids. This is a joint ditch, so the decision isn't really, we're the majority on that ditch, but we still need to engage the other member counties. So today is just to open up the bids. Jan received an email this morning. Yeah, is this the email? Oh, this was attached to an email. Woodridge Drainage of Norwood submitted a bid for $124,400. I have no bid bonds, so I'm not sure if this is a qualified bid, but.
Do they make note of bid bond, or do they mention it in there that, okay. So 124,000, what was it?
124,400. And Woodridge, WUETHERICH Drainage, Inc. of Norwood, Minnesota.
Okay. Well, if they're not low bid, I guess it won't matter if they are, then one of our attorneys will have to give us advice on that.
This is a bid from Consolidated Land Care, Inc. For all 5 areas, their bid is $238,110. They have parsed this out as a bid of $62,750 for Area 1, $135,520 for Area 2, $16,620 for Area 3, $18,620 for Area 4, and $4,600 for Area 5.
Hey, Bob, was that first one that you had received, did that indicate that it was for all of the areas combined, or was it specific on that, or?
Commissioners, it is a bid for areas 1 through 5.
Okay, so it includes all 5 of them?
Correct. Board casing,
Okay.
necessary connections, and mobilization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, Consolidated Land Care, Inc. Inside this envelope, there was no bid bond.
No bid bond?
No bid bond. Third bid is from A&T Septic Excavating and Excavating. There is a check in here. A&T Septic and Excavating, Inc. Appears like they are bidding each one separately. So Area 1, their bid is $40,000. Area 2 is $64,000. Area 3 is $17,000. Area 4 is $17,000. And Area 5 is $8,000.
146.
So, Commissioners, I do have a bid bond of $7,300, which was the 5% requirement that we had in the specifications.
Mr. Chair, Bob, so they're the only ones that have everything, okay.
So far, I have two more.
Okay,
two
I'm
more
sorry.
to go.
You have more?
Commissioners, I do have a cashier's check for $5,067.20.
That must be a lower bid then.
This is from Dudes Tiling LLC.
Say it again?
Dudes, D-U-D-E'(S), Tiling Inc. of Murdoch, Minnesota.
Somebody's pretty full of themselves, huh?
They just have a note here, I'm entering a bid on the entire project and also on each area. If I am awarded only one of a couple of the areas, I am willing to give you a cashier's check, money order for 5% of the bids that are awarded. So they gave us a bid bond for the whole project. So, looks to me like their bid for the whole project is $101,344. Area 1 is $30,328. Area 2 is $44,868. Area 3 is $10,922. Area 4 is $11,763. And Area 5 is $3,463. So total bid of $101,344. Board, the last bid I have is from Litzau Farm Drainage. Litzau is L-I-T-Z-A-U. Board, it does not appear that I have a cashier's check or money order for the bond payment. The Area 1 is $48,450. Area 2 is $44,825. Area 3 is $18,160. Area 4 is $14,575. And Area 5 is $8,000. I believe this vendor also emailed me letters of recommendation and stuff like that. So, Board, what I'd like to do is acknowledge that we opened up these bids. We'll make a listing of the bidders and their respective bid amounts.
Chair, I'll make a motion accepting the bids and forwarding it to the Joint Ditch Committee.
Motion by Glenn, is there a second? Second. Second by Potter, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Both same sign, motion carries unanimous. So, Bob, here's the signed warrant list.
And Board, we will give Lee and Susan an abstract of these bids, and I'll probably disseminate it back to you.
Thanks, Bob.
And then, Mr. Chair, there's a plat for you to sign in the back.
Okay. You voted on that, is that correct? Did we already vote? We did vote, yeah, okay. Okay, pretty much right on time. Sean Riley, good morning, Sean. Continuation of the public hearing from March 22nd.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, County Board. Just a reminder that this public hearing was closed at the last meeting, so to take further testimony, you would want to decide if you want to reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
The issue was considering a recommendation from the Planning Commission to amend the Wright County zoning ordinance to allow solar farms on restricted parcels. We've had this discussion for quite a few months now in a number of meetings, and it's led to other discussions about the solar ordinance in general, some of the things that townships have been looking at, township input. You instructed Mr. Kreiser to put together a letter of all the potential options on this issue, and we did that, including what would be the language of an emergency moratorium. Franklin Township has done that. Buffalo Township has discussed it. And at our last Planning Commission meeting, we had a number of solar items. And I don't know, there were some conversations on a number of issues with
Basically, we're just learning things.
Yeah. I'm going to give you this map again.
Okay, so this is where you either have one that's already been given to you or someone that's waiting to give you one relative to, or, no, these are ones you already have in hand.
Have been applied for.
Here.
Okay.
3 of them are done. 3 of them are currently being decided on.
Can you put this up on the end too, so the folks in the audience can see, and we'll kind of do a little bit of them in here. So there's 2 different colored stars
Well,
up
let me
there.
start off with the Aurora project. They are in green, down by Montrose Waverly, outside of Annandale, and east of Buffalo. Those have been permitted by the state. I know one of them, the Buffalo one, is currently being developed, and I think the state is holding a preliminary hearing on the Annandale one, and that one will be started. The other 6 stars, the red ones, are our jurisdiction, or the county's jurisdiction. 3 have been permitted, and 3 of them are to be decided on. And one of those is in Middleville. So Middleville did that, and that was a Wright Hennep and Co-op project. The star south of Delano, you can ignore that one. That was a potential request that would have been coming to us if a rezoning would have gone through. But because of that decision and the Franklin Township moratorium, that one won't be in front of us at this time.
So just so I'm clear on that one that you just mentioned, it's not coming before us because the rezoning was denied, or not because the rezoning wasn't completed, so therefore they hadn't applied yet?
Actually, the rezoning ended up getting dismissed.
Okay.
It had discussion on not allowing it, but because the Franklin Township moratorium occurred before a formal decision, they requested that it be dismissed because they weren't going to be able to act on it at this time anyhow.
Okay. Understood.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, what we're talking about is a property that has no building eligibility, which if you have one house on a 40, the rest of that 40 would not have a building eligibility. And we're talking about allowing the solar panels on a property that had
like say, let's say a 40 and the 5 acres sectioned off, so for financing, they would still be able to do it. I know this has turned into a solar or anti-solar discussion, and that's not what it is. Then the other thing that I did want to point out to the board at the last planning and zoning thing, there's some things, I don't know if it's unforeseen or whatever, but it's not necessarily things that the solar companies are doing, but Excel on certain sites are requiring just some, I don't know, we thought it was ridiculous things where they would have to have a pole for each tell me if I'm wrong on the
Each
shop.
megawatt.
For each megawatt, which is roughly 5 acres anyway. And then about 10 feet away, it goes over to another XL pole. That's what they're requiring on some of these sites. And we were just kind of like, what is going on here? So,
Yeah, I agree, that doesn't make sense.
and now, I did talk to one of the solar people, and he said, XL, if they are given a little bit of pressure, have backed off on some of those things, where they put it all into one unit and send the power off, so.
Yeah, and I don't know what side of it's true. I hear that Excel is pretty strict in how they're doing this, because originally these were going to be 1 megawatt gardens, so the tariff, the permitting process they wrote up is treating, even though there's 5 megawatts on the site, they're treating them as 5 1 megawatt projects, leading to all these poles. We also found out they're apparently building the access roads to perhaps a higher standard than needed land alteration. This Aurora project, the Green Star east of Buffalo, that's the one everybody met at and got a substantial estimate on land alteration that was going to be involved. Now, that was not our permit, but I think everybody up front thought it would be minimal. Tree removal, land alteration, power lines, and they're finding out a different. Again, that's the Aurora project, but the size is similar, a little bit bigger, 8 megawatts.
And again, Mr. Chair, those are things separate to what we're proposing here. What we're looking at here is when somebody sectioned off their building site and then the other land became restricted. And there are some sites, I think, was it 3 of them that we know of right now, Sean, where this would work? I think one was up by Maple Lake with a Wright Hennepin or something.
I know there's...
and one by
There's
Cokato.
one in Buffalo, there's one in Maple Lake, one down by Cokato, and I'm not sure if the other one, it was either Franklin Township or Woodland, and might be affected by this moratorium anyhow. But again, I know there's a lot of permits into Excel. I don't know if there are any more. I just know of those 3. So in total, in the county, there are, or what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If the 3 on the table are approved, we'll have 10
And Mr.
sites.
Chair, I can't speak for the other ones, I don't know the other sites, but the site in Cokato, the members of the town board have indicated to me that it is an ideal site that they felt is an ideal site for the panels in their area, so.
And Mr. Chair, I, personally don't think I think that's fine if townships are willing to go with that. The overall picture, though, is that we've got land use plans, and, when I read through all the land use plans a couple of years ago, there's a lot of thought that went into these, and a lot of research, and a number of people that were involved. And whether we agree with everything or not, that's what we have, and that's what we have to work with. So my overriding concern in all this is that we're not allowing currently industries on restricted ag land, and that's what's in our land use plan. So to throw that out, it just opens it to whatever other industry. How can we deny something else coming in and saying, well, we want to build whatever it is, this plant, a rendering plant, or whatever it is, and on this restricted piece of property. So that's really what's at the heart of the matter. It's not whether we agree or disagree with solar. If I had to look into the future, I would say that probably what's going to become the most efficient use of solar will be on people's houses, and it won't necessarily be out taking up, hundreds of thousands of 24,000 acres with panels, but I don't know that. I'd like to be able to see into that, and just overall concerning when some of the big companies that have used taxpayer dollars to get started because the federal government, state government's giving these companies money and they're already out of business. I mean, I don't know what the future is. I'm not so concerned about local companies, but Geronimo was a Minnesota company, now owned by, a Spanish company, it's taken over. There's just too many moving parts right now, and to be able to see what's going to happen in the future, none of us know that, but that's what I'm thinking may be what's coming in the future, but I don't know. We need something that's more than 18% efficient. I don't know how this is all going to pay for itself either, if it's only 18% efficiency, and we've got our Sherco plant and our NSP plant at 95% efficiency.
Now you're talking to solar in general again.
I know, okay. Disregard that. Just stick with the land use plan.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
One of the things we did discuss at one of the meetings, if we could get the attorney with the bow tie up to come in and answer a question for me real quick. We had talked about doing an overlay, allowing for those that are interested in it. How long would something like that take?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahllight, and going through that process, I would say, Sean, what do you think, at least 6 months to come up with an overlay district? I think on the fast end, 6 months would be the shortest a moratorium I think could be, if you're going to do that, up to a year.
And just if I can kind of build on that discussion, and, Charlie indicated that we're here to talk about the restricted parcels, and that's how this all started. Absolutely, that's how it all started, but we did 4 weeks ago branch out from that discussion and bring up this issue of overlay and kind of open the issue up beyond the restricted parcels. And that's in part why primarily why we laid it over for 4 weeks, is to kind of hear about options relative to doing things differently, whether it be an overlay district, and that was kind of the main thing talked about. And I think perhaps this is a good time for Greg to tell us about what he came up with on this piece of paper here, because we have it, folks in the room don't, so maybe you can kind of summarize one, what you believe the expectation that you was, first of all, and then your outcome of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding of what the board requested at the last time we discussed this was for our office to come up with the options that the board has before it as to how to proceed in light of the discussion and public comments that you received on the solar ordinance, taking into consideration the proposed amendment that's before you now, and also taking into consideration the concerns that have been raised both at the public and township level. So what we have here is the first two options really deal with the ordinance that's before you. And really, in essence, it's kind of clear cut. You can either adopt the proposed amendment that's before you, or you can deny it or decline it. So those are the first two. As far as number 3, that gets into the overlay discussion and kind of addressing some of the public concerns. And number 3 was the option to adopt today, if you wanted to, an emergency moratorium, if you felt that there is an emergency. If you didn't feel there was an emergency, then we can go forward with the general notice provision under 375, I think 5.1, which requires 10 days published notice for amending an ordinance. So those are kind of your options. You can do an emergency moratorium today. You can delay it 3 weeks and discuss this further and have public hearing, and then adopt a moratorium at that time. If you're looking at doing an overlay or doing substantial changes to the ordinance, or think that may be in order, our office is recommending option 3 in doing a moratorium. Option 4 is to not do a moratorium and to go forward with the amendments. The problem there is you're going to have applications coming in here during the process of trying to make amendments, and you're going to be treating different people differently in the end result. And I think it's best if you're going to recommend changes such as an overlay district that you put a freeze on everything right now, keep the status quo, and then go through and study it and get public comment.
Can you cancel a moratorium?
Yeah, you can. You can always cancel it earlier.
So so I guess what you're saying is if you did it for an X number of months, if you're done earlier than that, you can stop it earlier.
Or if additional information comes to light.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair.
Charlie, then Chris.
Mr. Chair, I did also want to point out, when Aurora does their things, it can go on restricted land, it just gets done that way. The other thing, when we do, if we do develop some type of an overlay, we may have an abandoned gravel pit that might be ideal for solar that's on restricted land. I think that we, by adopting the change that we have before us today, would allow more sites to be looked at that might be better locations than another one. The property in Cokato would be an example of that. Like I said, they didn't vote on it, but I've talked with members of the board, and they felt it's a real good site, whereas they could go to some other place that, might be way more objectionable. I just think by doing what today, and then would make it better, you'd have more sites to evaluate on this overlay. And the other thing, I guess I would say, after learning some things last week, you weren't there, Greg, at the last planning and zoning meeting, but I really am not opposed to putting a stop on this for a little bit until we can find out with some of the interconnection things where we have to have, and Sean, was that kind of the consensus of planning and zoning as far as you got it, that we would like to get a handle on it? There was kind of a pause with the planning and zoning members that were there when we're told about some of the interconnection things with Excel.
Right, Mr. Chair, County Board, that was one of the items that came up, the odd nature of maybe 20, 25 power poles clustered, and it's not needed engineering-wise. What was done by Excel without maybe proper notice to a township down the road right away, the land alteration. I think that transition area was probably a pretty debated topic, doing something like this in a transition area. So you might be right, offering up some restricted land in a trade-off to Xing out transition areas might have some logic, but we can't do that unless you do it under the structure of an amendment, looking at what your current regulations are.
Yeah. Just relative to gravel pits being on restricted parcels and maybe being a good place for these, if they meet our ordinance right now, they're not on restricted parcels, because you can't put a gravel pit on a restricted parcel, so
I just put that.
any of those parcels, Charlie, should have an entitlement. Now, arguably, the gravel pit's using it, but then if you come in and say, you know what, now we're reclaiming the gravel pit, I would think that entitlement becomes available again.
It wouldn't be restricted.
It wouldn't be, so
I was just
I don't necessarily see that
using that as an example,
likely.
just if there was a piece that was ideally suited. I shouldn't have said gravel pits, because you're right on that.
Yeah.
But it opens it up to more properties that might be ideally suited for the solar panels if we pass this ordinance. And this was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Board. I want to point that out. I mean, that's...
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Blyden.
You said we've got 3 green stars on here, which are the Aurora projects.
Correct.
The one is going to Annandale for discussion, did you say, or has been?
It's at the Public Utilities Commission for sort of a final review on the layout.
Okay, what about the one in the south of 12 there?
They're already constructing now.
Yeah, that's
That one's being constructed too?
correct.
The Annandale one, it looks to me like it's just south of the city of Annandale. Is it actually in the Annandale city limits, or is it in Corinna County?
It's
in Corinna.
Right. And the city had quite a bit of
just at the edge.
objection to the location so close to the city.
Okay,
But the project's been allowed.
okay. So the Corinna Planning and Zoning didn't have any part of hearing that because it was Aurora? Okay.
Correct.
nor did our planning and zoning, which we have a very similar thing going on right now between Delano and Franklin, and that's the consideration that we're looking at, because Delano claims that they have to put out quite a few, $8 million worth of infrastructure into that area, so at least we have the control over that now with our ordinance.
So, Mr. Chair, County Board, if I can, if you did do a moratorium to further look into our current structure, you would probably want to look at the entitlement issue in that process. As opposed to... As opposed to doing it.
I would not be opposed to that. I really wouldn't. I think, but like I said, after last week's planning and zoning meeting, I think there were quite a few members on the board that had pause, when they saw this interconnection thing that's going on.
Well, Aurora screwing it up for everybody.
Well, yeah, and, who knows what's going to happen with Excel needing 24,000 acres. Mr. Chair, Sean, Greg, no, the overlay is, if I'm remembering this correctly, is going to be where the most likely places would be, correct, for...
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hewsom, in theory, it could be an overlay district. I guess I don't want to make that assumption if it goes this direction, because we've talked about restricted lands, we've talked about gravel pits, we've talked about transition areas. Maybe you put those pieces into play and it ends up in a...
We talked about quality of farmland.
Right, so...
But it gives the local governments the options, correct?
Through the conditional process.
Well, it gives them another opportunity at input in the public meetings and in front of the county board in an amendment process, right? We've already got one township that's done it. I think Greg has already spoken to the difficulty of doing an overlay district for land use based on boundaries of townships, of cities.
As soon as we have no control over.
Well, I know, I'm just saying in theory, doing land use based on political boundaries is tough to do. Now, can we accomplish the same thing by taking more further input from the townships on transition areas, the farmland, the restricted land issue, the gravel pits, and get to some type of better agreement, compromise? I don't know.
The city of St. Michael has 3 of these approved, and they have put on a moratorium on now.
They must have just done that.
A couple meetings ago, Mike?
Yes, it was for sure 2 months.
I guess the question is relative to the overlay district, and there'll have to be a discussion on that. I think before it was kind of talked about just simply can one township basically say, we don't want them, and I think maybe Greg has, and Greg, I don't want to speak for you, but there needs to be some rhyme or reason to where these overlay districts are.
Yeah.
And is it fair to say that one township just can't, maybe there's no rhyme or reason if one township, the entire township is allowed, and the other one, none of it is allowed. There needs to be some discussion that has some rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, whenever you adopt an ordinance, you need to be reasonable in how you do that. And my fear would be if you just started crossing out townships, that could be seen as arbitrary and capricious and not as reasonable. So that's the concern. I'm not ruling it out entirely right now because we haven't had the public hearings, we haven't had discussion on it, but at least from a 10,000-foot level, it would appear to be very close to becoming arbitrary and capricious and not reasonable, if you just did it on the basis of, not here. I think you need to have more criteria at the end of the day as to what you're doing.
Mr. Chair.
So there needs to be some criteria, perhaps these criteria could have flexibility, so maybe one township would have more area than other areas?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair. I think...
But not 100%, 0%?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't recommend at this point in time adopting an overlay district based on political boundaries. I think it needs to be based on the underlying land use, what's going on, zoning, land type, land criteria, topography, vegetation. There are a lot of things that can go into what it is.
Well, proximity to housing, some township like Buffalo Township perhaps has more housing than a Woodland Township does, and therefore, some, I don't know, lakes, different things at the township. Mike?
So, Mr. Chair, Greg, so the hoops and hurdles, for lack of a better word, you can have them apply to different townships to match without having the arbitrary capricious thing. It can have a little bit of flexibility in how much local control there is.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Potter, I believe we could do something like that, as long as it's reasonable.
Reasonable,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think public input would be very valuable in any process that you did in doing that.
Because you want to have the flexibility for each township, how they view it, because some might be just fine with it and some aren't, but just make sure the flexibility so they're not just one size fits all for all townships, all 18 of them, because I don't think that's going to fly too well.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Potter, that's what happened with the land use plan.
Well, yeah, that's a good example. Some township has hundreds of acres available for different types of residential development, others have much less.
And some, Mr. Chair, have resource land dedicated to them, and some
And
don't.
others have none.
And others have none.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to go with an emergency moratorium for 1 year.
Mr. Chair, I gave you an adopted, Mr.
Do you want to...
Commissioner and I have a sample
We
resolution.
do have a lot of folks here. Do we want to let people give some
Yeah,
input, or?
people might want to speak.
Chair has
Well, there is no public hearing available.
Well,
But if you want, yeah, I have no.
Greg, you don't have a problem with us allowing input from folks that are here today? Do you have any problem with
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we reopen public hearing. What's really not, what we're discussing now will be not the ordinance that was, the change that's proposed. It
Are
will
you
be-
okay with not having your motion?
Yeah, I'll withdraw my
Like I said,
motion.
I just,
I'll withdraw my motion.
if we didn't have 20 people in here, so,
I make a motion that we reopen the public hearing.
okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Burrell, second by Potter. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Sean, just briefly, I see we have a letter here, or an email here from Monticello Township whereby they indicate, now that they better understand it, that they're opposed to the amendment relative to the entitlement. Did we get any other input via letter that you should advise us of?
Mr. Chair, County Board, no additional input
Okay.
since the last meeting, just Monticello. Before we had heard from Franklin and Buffalo Township, and for the most part silent from the rest of the townships.
Okay, so at this time, we'll take public input. I see a number of township officers, so if you're from a township, of course, give us your name and what township you're from, and if you're representing the industry, please give us your name and what company you represent, and if you're somebody else, just name and address, please. We'll start with Franklin Township.
Dwayne Ballman, Franklin Township. Commissioners, I think we should go ahead and pass the emergency moratorium and put a hold on it. Let's slow it down. Let's learn more. Let's find out what's going on. I had the experience of seeing what's happened up in Buffalo Township. It's a disaster up there. They've cleared 6 to 8 acres of trees. They're going to move 215,000 cubic yards of soil. That's not disturbing, not disturbing the land. I did also look at the property on Dempsey Avenue south of Waverly. Beautiful, beautiful farm field. I don't think we should be putting solar panels there. There's a lot of land we can use. After the planning and zoning meeting the other night, I met with Reed Richardson and Michelle Matthews out in the lobby here. They said, what can we do?
Can you tell us, are they from the industry?
They're from the industry.
Okay.
They're from the industry. They're the ones that have formed a joint effort between U.S. Solar and Potentia Solar to form Minnesota Solar LLC. So they cornered me out in the lobby, and they said to me, what can we do to move forward and get something going? I said, we can look at it, we can move forward. And they were talking 2017-18. I said, just bear in mind, we would not allow it if we have any way to control it, not on our good ag land. I said, look at the gravel pits and things like that, we don't have a problem with it. So if you want to move forward, don't even approach us with good farmland, we won't allow it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don is already up.
Don Schmidt, Buffalo Township. I also support the proposal to put a moratorium on. I think we need it right now. We need to slow down.
we need to take a look at what's happening. I'm not going to dwell on what's happened in our township. Most of you's all seen the picture. People that are out there are appalled that came out there to take a look at what happened to us. So this really gives everybody a chance to take a look at the whole picture, take a look at our county, the effect on our county, and the effect on our townships, and let everybody step back a few steps and take a look. Where's the urgency? I mean, let's take a look at it. Maybe we can avoid some mistakes and, somehow make it workable so that it suits, more of the people and it suits our townships and our county. So, thank you.
Finally, I have a question. First, like others, I think I got notice of the meeting that occurred last Friday out there that Mary O'Neill put together, and I didn't get my email until after the meeting had already, I got my email prior to that, but I didn't actually go online and look at it until after the meeting had already occurred. Otherwise, I actually would have been available and would have came up. But I did go drive by that site after the fact, and I have one question for you relative to the poles that are up. Of course, they put new poles that are inside the old poles. How come those old poles that look very aged and weathered, why is there what appears to be fresh soil up against those, almost like even though the poles are aged and weathered, the soil is just recently dug? Can you explain that to me?
I really don't have an answer to that, and I don't know what they did.
Did you notice that too, though?
Yes, I noticed it, and I don't know if they just put more dirt around those poles. We were told at one time that those poles were going to be removed. You see, there's a telephone cable on those old poles, and that's why there's...
Yeah, there was one cable or line of some sort on
That's
it.
a telephone cable.
Okay.
And we were told that they were going to put another cross arm lower on the new poles and put the telephone cable on those poles and remove the old poles. That's another thing that is really concerning and disappointing to us. We're not told anything. The original plan was on that out there, it was supposed to be an underground feeder line over to the substation. And all of a sudden, XL is out there with 5 trucks sitting on the road and they're putting up new power poles. And have you seen where the new ones, they're further up yet?
Yeah.
We have all these safety issues we're concerned about, and all of a sudden, we got these big poles sitting further up in our right-of-way. Somebody runs off a road and hits one of those poles. You know, who are they going to sue? Probably the township. It's happened to us, not on a power pole, on another situation. We weren't told anything, and now we got all these power poles there, and I don't have the answer about the dirt, but...
Did you make any progress, because there was XL Energy out there that day on Friday morning?
No.
Oh, they didn't show up?
No.
Okay.
It was with the Nell, wasn't it, or?
Yeah. Well, Representative O'Neill is looking into that.
So they're trying to get the poles moved out the way the old ones are and that line put on, so you got...
At this point, we don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. They don't tell us anything.
Yeah.
Also, just Representative O'Neill called me, I guess it was Sunday evening again. They had a committee hearing at St. Paul yesterday, and actually she invited me to come and testify, and it was pretty short notice, and I'm trying to fire them a little bit, and she has proposed an amendment now that they can't clear cut any more than 3 acres of wooded property. She didn't know how far it's gonna go because she's getting opposition from the people that got all the money, as she put it, so anyhow, it was brought up.
Charlie.
And Mr. Chair, and I do not know this for fact or anything, but I'm wondering if they put those poles right in the ditch, if they're not going to, it's going to be a temporary thing, take out the old line and then put a real high-quality line back and move them back. It might be that those ones in the ditch are temporary. Maybe we can find that out.
Well, the problem is that the PUD, or the public PUC, they're up here and they don't want to communicate with. Yeah, they don't want to communicate with the local government agencies, and that's not right.
No.
That is not right.
And same way with the tremendous amount of dirt that's gonna be moved. We weren't told, about now we're talking about thousands and thousands of cubic yards of soil that's gonna be, moved around or whatever's all gonna happen. We weren't told about any of this stuff, so
gets kind of frustrating with what it does.
And if they're gonna do it there, or are they gonna do it at the other locations too? And
Right.
the PUC needs to be held accountable.
Thank you.
I don't know what's all happened, but would it help at all if the county sent a letter to the PUC telling them they were not happy with the
Lack of communication.
treatment, and particularly mention the trees and
I think send some pictures with it. I think that's a great idea.
the amount of soil, but then the other thing, I mean, some of the trees, I mean, that's too late for that, I guess it's, I mean, unless the PUC has them replant, but things like these power lines, what is the answer to this question? There now is power poles that are in the right of way. There's two lines of power poles. Who would want to have property? I would like to have a house and have two lines of power poles running across the front of your property. It's bad enough to have one.
Yeah.
But it's,
But again, the right of way, who would even think you could put something 8 feet into the right of way without having communication with the town board and getting approval?
Yeah,
And then who would even think the town board would ever approve such a thing?
right,
Good question.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that maybe we should kind of send some sort of a letter and,
I'm wondering if it should go to the PUC or if it should go to XL.
well, XL, PUC, and the Aurora, all three of them. And then maybe Greg can write that letter and maybe Greg and Sean can write that letter and we can coordinate that it gets signed by the board. Sure.
Yeah, Mr.
But,
Chair, and I was at those meetings at Buffalo Township, and it's way different what's happening than what was proposed back then. There was none of that talk of, to go with the lay of the land, and, there was, so, yeah.
And again, we know there's some other folks in the room that do things, or that are in this business that have nothing to do with that, and we don't want to
Right.
make everybody guilty by association, but,
Right.
No,
okay, thanks, Donnie.
thank you.
Come on up.
Oh, John?
John Sanskowski, Franklin Township Supervisor. I think I also got an email from Mary O'Neill. She's concerned about the long-term picture and what's happening, the farmland and the economics of it, that's being taken out of production. And so I also would support a temporary moratorium or whatever, and on these solar arrays, and also that I would agree with it should be done on an individual township basis. I think every township is different. We don't have a lot of farmland left, and we have a lot of people, that would be close to these fields. And so I don't think it's a good policy to just plop them in open fields. Like I say, to look at the big picture, 25 years is a long time, and that is going to take away jobs, and in my opinion, it's going to not be helpful to the local economy. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Phyllis.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for hearing us. I'm Phyllis Latour with Southside Township, and we did have a request at our last month's meeting to consider a solar panel farm on a restricted piece of land. I believe it was the company that was proposing the second farm at Annandale, and of course they didn't want to run into the opposition that Aurora did. We decided that we would put a hold on it to see how all these solar farm issues would go. Suggestion was made that they were looking at a restricted piece of land, that our township is inundated with gravel pits and a lot of unclaimed reclamation gravel pits. We were told that that's not feasible, to put a solar panel farm in the gravel pits. Didn't give us a reason why it was not feasible. One of them was because the site they were proposing was next to a substation. They wanted to put this solar farm in for the city of South Haven for solar energy. My question to the gentleman was, is it feasible economically for 197 people, man, woman, and child, to invest that kind of money? And he didn't give me a response. So we would like to see the board, the commissioners, do a moratorium on this and to see where all of this goes, these solar farms, see if they are feasible, see how many companies are going to stay with the projects, excuse me. And also that I'm asking, when you mentioned doing an overlay of different townships, I'm asking the board also to consider how many can be put in. We have a lot of gravel pits, and we certainly in our township do not want to see a solar farm in each gravel pit. Unless, you know, it's, I don't think when the new land use plan was adopted several years ago, we had a public meeting to see what our residents preferred. They approved the current land use plan that we have because they wanted to maintain that open country feeling. And I think that our residents would be very disappointed if we ended up with 5 or 6 solar panel farms in our township.
Mr. Chair?
So
When was that done, that last land use?
Pardon?
When was that last land use done?
Were you in the northwest? You were in the northwest, were you in the northwest corridor?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I was very heavily involved with that, and that time we decided to have a public hearing on it, what the residents really wanted. And that was the suggestion. They all voted in favor of us maintaining that 1 in 40. And I agree with Commissioner Hewson. I think if you allow these unrestricted parcels, you're opening up other requests to come in.
What year was that done? 2007?
I believe so. I don't know.
I think it was later than that.
It was later than that, I believe, yes.
Started in 2005.
Yeah.
We did 3 plans, approximately.
Yeah.
Northeast quadrant, the northwest, and then the
Yes.
12 corridor.
And, you know, there was a lot of input, a lot of work on the county's part, a lot of work on the township's part to adopt this land use plan.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Steve Nisbet with Wright Electric. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. First off, we're not part of the Aurora process or the Geronimo process there. It's very much a different piece. We've traditionally and historically since the mid-1930s worked with the townships and with the counties really directly. We're also not part of the Excel Community Solar Garden Program, so if there's some strange or multiple pole interconnections or anything like that, that's not our practice to install solar panels that way. We've intentionally chosen smaller areas rather than 40 acres or 90 acres or something like that, so it's going to be 10 to 15 acres. We've done that intentionally so it doesn't create change the look and feel of the entire landscape. In our case, and probably all these guys' cases, I don't want to speak for all the solar builders, but the proximity to a substation is paramount. If we're not close to a substation, that can take the economics of the project out of make it to where they're not work out for the project itself. So I just wanted to make those couple of comments there. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So.
Steve, do you have anything that would be proposed right now on restricted land?
We do, yes. Maple Lake Township, just west of County Road 12 and 37, we have a substation there, Black Lake substation.
You would consider that kind of an ideal site for solar panels?
Perfect site. It's right behind. It's on the northern part of it's a farmed piece, but he's got a little bit of a low spot in there, so this little area doesn't get farmed as much on the north side of it. We would put it right up there in that side. He'd still be able to farm the southern section of his property. It would be out of sight from the road, that kind of a deal. That's kind of part of our site process as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Did you see it?
I did.
Yep.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. Steve, Wright Electric. Yeah.
Do you want to spell your last name, Steve?
Yeah, Nisbet. Thank you.
Morning, Brett.
Morning. Brett Holker, Supervisor, Monticello Township. The only thing that I would like to reiterate, based on some of the comments from Wright Hennepin, is that if you do a moratorium, I'd urge you to get together with the industry and try to understand how the logistics of where the substations are and how the engineering and technical piece works, and make that a part of, if you do an overlay district, make that a piece of it, because it feels to me like some of the information that we've got, we don't have a good understanding of where's the pressure and where's the request going to come from, and it may make a lot of effort with placing these areas in consideration kind of a moot point if we don't understand that. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the request that we had sent over, or the recommendation that we had sent over, was founded in a lot of what Chris had said with regard to the fact that if it's a restricted parcel, our kind of feeling was that we're not letting any other industry do anything on a restricted parcel. Are we opening up a can of worms to open that to other industries, and something that we should look out for, so.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Allison Smith. I'm with SunShare, a community solar company. We're developing the garden in the city of Waverly that you may have heard about, with I think 80% residential subscribers. So it's again a little different beast than some of the solar farms. But you guys have a pretty good understanding of solar. I just want to reiterate kind of the last comments that the solar arrays are really restricted based on electrical land, what the solar resource of the area is, what the consumer interest is. We've got people who want to sign up, and so we want to provide them with an opportunity to provide solar to them. Our garden in Waverly is sold out, and so we need to build more so that we can subscribe more people up. But so it's really difficult to incorporate all of those things into traditional land use ordinances. It's just different, and it requires a different approach to land use regulation. So I guess I would ask that you let those restrictions, the restrictions of the electrical lines, of who's interested, who wants to host these, those kinds of restrictions, guide the development rather than some traditional things that don't quite fit, but they're the tools we've always had. So that's what we're trying to apply instead of creating a new tool for a new use. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir, come on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name's Gordy Simonton, and I'm with Solarstone, so I've probably been wearing out since November a path up here to this podium. But I did want to just echo the same sentiments I believe that the representative from Monticello Township just brought to your attention. And we would be more than willing to participate in a workshop with the commissioners to bring them up to speed on the industry and so forth. I've been up here before, talked to you about some of the constraints that we have when we go in to look at these sites, that any developer would have to, and I'm not going to go through that again, but just by way of example, to give you a couple of data points on this, talking about rooftop, we're agnostic about that. We think the more solar, the better, but there's only about 25% of the homes in the U.S. that would even qualify for rooftop based on the pitch of the roof, based on the orientation to the sun and shading characteristics. And that's an industry standard. That's not something I'm just pulling out. So to look at that as the solution long-term, I think you're probably going to see pockets of that, but you're not going to be able to see it from this renewable energy initiative that started. The other thing that I would add is, and I was pleased, and I want to thank Sean for providing me an invitation to go out to Marysville for that officials township meeting that you had out there. Number one, I was impressed with the passion. I know you had 18 of the townships that were there, and I was impressed with the fact that the engagement of the individuals that were there. And but I wanted to let you know that there was some information that was being distributed there, and since I was a guest, I didn't feel that it was my prerogative or purview to be able to stand up and say anything. But again, another example, I think there was a number that was thrown out, 22,000 or 24,000 acres is going to be used by Excel. The state's mandated that they have 1.5% of their energy load by 2020 to be solar. That's about 450 megawatts. If you do the math on that, that's about 2,200 to 2,300 acres for that. So somebody added an extra zero in there, but I think those are some of the things that, from a workshop standpoint, that we would be happy to come in and sit down, and both of my partners are well-versed in the industry and can be able to provide that. So there was a couple other things that came up too. There was a question in the Marysville meeting that I heard about, we have 89 gravel pits. I think one of the things that's incumbent upon us as developers is to come and try to come in with solutions and not just, expect everybody else to solve those for us. A couple questions I would have about that would be, are they operational? If the townships would help us out to identify where those are at, that would be helpful. 40% of what we do today, ag is on the bottom of our list, prime ag is on the bottom of our list in terms of what we're looking for land, primarily because of the cost. Costs almost twice as much for that as opposed to us going into wastewater treatment facilities that we've done, gravel pits that we're doing, and also we have 2 projects that are surrounded correctional facilities in the state of Minnesota. Those represent about 40% of our 17 projects that we have here in the state. So we're not opposed to that. In fact, those types of property are much less expensive for us to do, and repurposing it would be for prime ag. So that's typically our last place to go. But in the example of Cokato, we're the ones that have the Cokato project. We don't consider that, and again, I'm not a farm expert and I'm never going to pretend to be one, but we don't consider that to be prime ag property that we have there is that opportunity. Another question that came up is, are other counties experiencing this? I heard one of the officials that in the beginning of the meeting say, are other counties experiencing some of these same issues that we are? And obviously you guys, which I used to refer to when I was on the other side of the dais as the M word, but other counties have experienced this. Dakota County probably had over 100 applications that came in. They're doing less than 12 projects in that county. So there's constraints that go along with that. Chisago County, that probably last summer, almost a year ago, blew up with them, but that was an Aurora project as well. So back to the the chairman's comment about all of us being painted with the same brush, there are these solar farms that are out there that are obviously coming in, and there's miscommunications potentially. It's a two-way street, but obviously the Buffalo situation, from what I've heard and observed, and I saw the KMSP TV spot the other night, there's obviously a level of trust that was violated there, and developers need to take responsibility for that. Just in the building, and you guys run into this all the time, you've got residential developers. There's good ones and there's bad ones, and after a while you figure out who the good ones are and you eliminate the bad ones. So we have a responsibility to do that as well. I would also add too, though, that it's also incumbent upon the developers to work with Xcel. Xcel has been very good with us. I think you'll hear complaints and so forth, but that too is a two-way street from a communication standpoint. We had 2 CUPs that were approved last October and November in the city of Sartell and the city of Scandia. In December, we received a notification from Xcel that the solar gardens were now going to require 85-foot poles to provide emergency communications back to the substation so that if something happened with a surge, they could shut the solar gardens down. Well, we'd already received the conditional use permits and approval, and being, again, on the other side of the dais as I have in the past, I looked at that as, well, this looks like a bait and switch to me if I was sitting in that position. We come in, we get the approval, and now we're walking back in and asking for an 85-foot pole. Well, that was at the behest of Xcel, but the cities didn't care. So we had to go back in. I did immediately, went back in with the letter that we received from Xcel, explaining to them that this is what happened to us. This is the first time that we understood that. So the industry is kind of in diapers, and there's some things we're learning as we go along. But we took the initiative to go back to Xcel and say, we don't understand why you need this. This looks to us like old technology. There's satellite telemetry out there that's available that could serve the same purpose and not create these unsightly view sheds for people in the area. They have turned a corner on that, and now we have a 12-foot post with a satellite dish that's about the size of a DirecTV dish. Now, we still have to go in with our electrical engineers and get approval for that, but in both the Scandia and the Sartell site, I was able to go back to the city council and say, we came back to you with a solution here. The other issue that you're talking about here with all these poles coming in, we are working with them right now because we went back to them on some of our earlier designs, and they want to put 5 separate pads for what's called a switchgear cabinet. And each one of those switchgear cabinets has a meter in it and also has breaker switches in it to shut down for emergency purposes and surges there. They want to put 5 poles up and connect it to each one of those switchgear cabinets and then run it across to wherever the transmission line is. We said, why, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? There's technology today that would allow all of those 5 connections in the cabinets to be one, and they call it a, what's the word for it? Common bus is what they refer to it as. And if we can get them to agree to that, and their designers have it right now, there will only be one pole going into the common bus in that cabinet to serve all 5 of those lines that come out of there. So I just wanted to let you know that there are some things that we're working with them to try to come to some resolution with that, and we have to learn, you know, as we go along too. So, and the last thing is I've been up here since November. I'm here basically for the deed restriction. I understand you have some other challenges and so forth with solar, but I'm trying to draw a bright line between the deed restriction and the building eligibility as opposed to some of the other challenges you have with solar.
Sir, can I get your name again?
Yeah, it's Gordy Simonton.
Gordy. I get a question, because every time, you know, I'm fairly new on this too, but every time we get one question answered, there's 2 more questions pop up, and we seem to be chasing the tail here. And it's like just in past experience, when you get to that point, usually you do a little time out and try to figure out what's going on here.
Sure.
And that's where we seem to be on this, is every time we turn around in Buffalo Township here, they were told one thing, and boom, something else completely different happens. And who's next, or what's next, or where do we go from here? It's just strange we don't have enough information to make a good quality decision here.
Yeah, you know, in the site, in all the plans that we're doing right now for the 17 projects that we have, and we just started on it, we're just getting ready to put a shovel in the ground on 4 of them here, starting at the end of this month. We've made site visits with Excel, and we've gone out and met with them to understand where they're coming in from the transmission side, where they want to have the switchgear that they need in order to put their meters in. So we've met with them and gone through that. They have to go back to the city with not only our information, but with theirs to get these permits to be able to do this. So like up in Sartell as an example, there's a residential area there, and to put poles in there doesn't make any sense because everything is underground. So they still have, I'm not sure when I'm hearing some of the testimony here, which I'm not saying isn't accurate, but it surprises me because Excel would have to come back into the jurisdictions. My understanding is to get a permit to be able to do that.
Can you, in your opinion, with this Aurora facility in Buffalo Township, who had those poles placed in there? Do you believe it was Excel that did that? Okay, so it wasn't the solar company, it was Excel themselves?
No, it's Excel. And we don't, everything that we do is inside of our footprint. And then there is an easement that we have to create on the property to allow that for Excel to be able to come in and do the work that they need to do. But they have a complete separate permitting process that they have to go back to the city and get approval in that permitting process, and we're not involved with that. But we want to take the step to make sure that we understand what they're doing, because there's some things that we've told the city that these boxes are going over here, they may require us to do landscaping around them. I mean, there may be other things from a screening standpoint that we have to be aware of. But no solar garden can be functional unless it has 2 things. That's access to a transmission or a distribution line, and also has access with some type of an easement to get into that location.
Well, you forgot the 3rd one.
What's that?
It's got to have the sun.
It's true.
Gordy, just one comment on, you had mentioned about developers, residential developers, you got good ones, you got bad ones, and over time you eliminate the bad ones.
Yep.
I think suggesting that that we eliminate them, or that the zoning entity eliminates them, and unfortunately I don't think we can eliminate them. And they're probably the reasons we have to have more rules than otherwise maybe we would. In this scenario, we've got players like Wright Hennepin, and we've got a great history with Wright Hennepin, and we know Wright Hennepin, and we have great trust in Wright Hennepin, and we know at the end of 25 years, Wright Hennepin's still going to be there owning that. We have a project in Buffalo Township that apparently there was a bad actor, and we already know that. Now, I have no doubt that you're going to do a good job with the ones you do, and I'll believe that until you prove me wrong. But the point is, we have folks, and we have to take their application, and we can't just tell them, you know what, we heard you didn't do well in this other county. We have to take their application, and if they meet the criteria, we have to let them build. So unfortunately, that's why I think we have to do some more looking here, because we're going to have some folks that apparently we've already found on the very first one ain't going to do it right.
Again, and the problem with those, and there's 3 of them, and we had no control.
Well, that one we didn't, and whether we had control, and they would have came in and said, we're not going to cut down any trees, and they went down, and, what is it, you know, I mean, if they didn't do what they told the PUC, or they didn't do what they told us, you know, I'm not sure. Maybe they didn't tell the PUC that, but they told Buffalo Township that.
So the problem is, there's another location where they're going to be starting too already. Again, we had no control over it, which is unfortunate.
And Mr. Chair, perhaps when we are in discussions with the townships and all the interested players in this, that the individual townships, and this just occurred to me when Mr. Simonson was talking, that if they perhaps can, I don't know if we are ultimately, we have to approve it, but if the township wants to rezone 20 acres or 30 acres, that's something that we could look at, and then it would no longer be restricted farmland, because, as you said, not all the farmland is prime ag, you know, but that would be up to the individual townships. If they wanted to allow, then they could.
Rezone, so it would be allowed?
If, I don't know.
But it's only allowed in the ag zone, right?
I'm just throwing that out.
If you rezone it, then you couldn't, because
Right,
these used to are allowed in the ag area.
exactly. So, you know,
And up in industrial, okay.
yeah, that would be up first to the township. If they approve that this 40 acres or whatever rezone, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying do it or don't do it, but it's an option for them to consider.
That's all I had, unless you had other questions for me, but I greatly appreciate your diligence on this and your vetting of this process. I think you all have done a good job with that. I know we've tabled this about 3 times now, and the message I'm getting from that is that the county really does want to have this. They just want to make sure that they're doing it in the right way and the responsible way. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this issue? Come on up.
Mr. Chair, the rest of the county board, thank you for listening to us. My name is Bill Langenbacher. I'm from Clearwater Township, supervisor. First question I have is, what is an overlay district? I've heard that talked about a lot, and I'm not sure what it is.
Well, Sean, why don't you explain it, since you're the expert? We have them in at least one other area, which is resource land, maybe some others, I'm not sure.
I think the best example I'll give is the shoreland district. We're all familiar with the lakes in Wright County, and then we have a shoreland district around each and every lake. You know, it's not arbitrary to the lakes in this township or that township, and the district is 1,000 feet from each lake, and there's different regulations in that overlay district than out of it.
So basically, the district would be ag, but then there'd be another overlay that it would also be that, so both sets of rules would apply, agricultural rules and in the areas where it was overlaid with this overlay rules as well, correct, Sean?
One district overlaying another.
Yeah.
The overlay district is over the underlying ag zoning district or whatever.
So there's rules above and beyond the underlying district, which would be agriculture.
Understood. Thanks much. In addition to that, I would just like to, I can't speak for the rest of my supervisor board because we didn't discuss this, but speaking for myself, I'd like to express my concern for the other townships and my support for the other townships in suggesting that a moratorium is probably something that the board should consider. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak today? Yes, come on up.
Laura Caspari, Socor Energy.
I'm working with Wright Hennepin, as I mentioned last time, on the two sites. They're both in townships Maple Lake and Middleville, which have expressed their support for the projects. They have not had the concerns. We're not with Excel. We're not doing anything to do with Aurora. And I just wanted to remind you that the entitlement issue, we're at risk of throwing our the rural co-ops projects out with for a bunch of reasons that have nothing to do with what we're doing. They're really ideal sites. Hopefully we'll be able to move forward with those. So I'd ask your consideration for those as we move forward with, given that they're in townships that are supportive.
I'm sorry, you're asking for, say it again, the last 3 or 4 sentences?
I was just saying, asking for your support on those projects in consideration that they're located in townships that are supportive. And so we're asking that the entitlement restriction be lifted in those areas. And the talk of a moratorium for a year is certainly very concerning. If there's a short-term one to address these issues, that's one thing. I will speak for the people that are doing projects with Excel. If you do a moratorium, there's a certain timeline to do with Excel's interconnection queue. And if they're not able to get a permit in a pretty tight fashion here, those projects will have to be rejected by Excel's interconnection queue. So the effect of a moratorium wouldn't necessarily just be slowing things down. It would probably be killing all those deals.
Is it fair to say that there's a reasonable likelihood that there will be an extension of some of these programs or opportunities if what starts off with the first projects are successful?
Right.
But there would be consideration for these things to be renewed?
I can't speak to what Excel would do in this exact situation, but in other locations in the past, they've not given any such extensions or any consideration of that nature. So.
Well, the issue is they're going to have so many, so if they can't get it from anywhere, they're going to have to extend it.
Yeah, if they need to get their 1.5% by law, you're right, that's a good point. But the other thing is that we had heard at a meeting out at Wright Hennepin, a solar meeting here a few months ago, and Charlie, you were there as well, and I suspect that some other folks in the room were there, but there was some industry people, and I don't know if any of those people are in the room right now, but one industry person in particular, I guess I should say, indicated that it was his belief that the economics of these solar gardens were improving so rapidly, i.e. with both the reduction in cost and the increase in efficiency, that he felt that it was literally just a couple years away and these things may be able to make ends meet without subsidies and these other sorts of things that are kind of propping them up right now. So if that were the case, I think to think that this is kind of just a short-term issue would probably be foolish, because it may become viable without any pressure, because obviously Wright Hennepin, you're not required to do this by any law, right? You're just choosing to do this. Correct. So I mean, we're seeing Wright Hennepin do it by virtue of maybe one, economics, and maybe just trying to be good environmental stewards and those sorts of things. I'm not sure of all their rationale, but they're doing it without mandate. Right. So, but I understand what you're saying. That right now there are some deadlines, and that.
Yeah, there are some deadlines, and if those projects get kicked out of the queue, they will most likely lose their ability to build at 5 megawatts, and they'll have to build at 1 megawatt, and so then your economics are reduced severely. So I think that the cooling effect would more than outweigh what you're talking about with the improvements in cost over time. But I should set that to one side. I'm here to talk about the Wright Hennepin projects again. Supportive townships, small projects. We're not doing all these polls we're talking about with Excel and then those issues that are real. We're not part of the Aurora project, and it's unfortunate there may be collateral damage to your local co-op because of what's going on today. And that's really what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else wish to speak today? Sean?
Mr. Chair, County Board, I'll just focus on the Excel part of it. These applications, these permits went through Excel well over probably a year ago, and I've seen some of that permit work, and there was nowhere on there, have you checked with the local county? Have you got zoning approval? Have you got conditional use permits? Those were taken in well before they checked with us locally. Commissioner Burrell, at the last meeting, we heard from a developer that Excel is kind of going to do what they want to do on needing to upgrade their lines and the road right-of-ways, and they were not given the latitude to eliminate the number of poles or boxes. So I don't know what Excel's doing. I've tried to contact them a few times. They're a private company, so it's hard to get information on these details. This map, the reference was 450 megawatts of the 1.5% needs to come from solar. We already have approximately 100 of that in Wright County. I think it'd be hard to say that Wright County's anti-solar, or we haven't allowed already some provisions, and then see what comes of it.
Okay, just so that I understand, we have two for sure that are breaking ground, that are Geronimo or
Aurora.
I'll just call it at the state level. There's
State level.
3 at the state level.
3, but there's 2 for sure. The one is still being discussed?
Well, it's going to break ground. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
it's
So we
the
got-
details.
All right, so we have 3, and how many have the county approved at the local level?
We've got 3 approved at the local level and 3 to be decided on.
Pending, okay.
Okay, so potential, no, those 3 are not on restricted properties?
That's correct.
Otherwise, they won't apply.
Okay, so we're going to have 9 in Wright County.
Well, more than that, because the cities have some.
Right, the
No, that's
Yeah, the
right.
city,
You're right.
right,
No, I'll say Michael will have 3.
3 and we
9,
will
10,
Waverly has
48.
14, 15.
and I would agree, Wright Hennepin is maybe
And they have,
getting caught in the
Hennepin
middle
has
of it,
some
because
too.
if you do a moratorium, it doesn't matter what you say on the entitlement issue. It doesn't make sense to adopt that amendment and then do a moratorium. If you do a moratorium, we should discuss the entitlement issue.
I think I'm okay with that. If we're going to do a moratorium, then when we have the discussion and the overlay to look at this, because I think it makes sense to change this. And Greg, you can correct me, but if we make this so that the solar panels are exempt on the restricted land, it does not open up a can of worms. You're not going to come in and say, I want to have a gravel pit there. You're still going to have to come back and, well, we'd have to change the ordinance again.
You'd have
They
to go
can't-
through you'd have to go through the same process.
Should we, did you come up to the point because you kind of thought the public hearing component was
No,
done? or
I
did you
just
have-
wanted, Excel was starting to get drawn into the conversation.
okay.
I'll make a motion to close the
Why
vote.
don't we just one last, Dan might have anyone who wishes to speak? Okay, Mark?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Potter. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
I'll make a motion adopting resolution, emergency interim zoning ordinance institution and emergency moratorium of solar energy farms. And the reason being, a temporary emergency zoning ordinance instituting a moratorium prohibiting further solar energy farms that is necessary in order to hold discussions and hearings to determine whether a longer-term moratorium zoning ordinance should be adopted and implemented to protect public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Wright County for a one-year time period. Do I have to read the rest of these?
No, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahlleiten, the resolution before you is an interim temporary moratorium that'll go into place until we hold a public hearing, which we're required to do under 37551. So the resolution you're adopting would go into effect immediately, but it would be until we have a public hearing.
Okay, so when you would post notice, you post notice and then another moratorium.
Would be imposed at that point in time.
Okay, so this is just an emergency moratorium.
Yeah,
So
So does he not say 12 months then? He just,
I wouldn't say 12 months, I would say until we have a public
Can we
hearing.
have the public hearing? Okay,
I will second that.
I want to make sure I
Motion by-
do this properly.
Commissioner Devine, second by Commissioner Houston. I think we probably ought to do this, and I think emergency moratorium is important simply because without it, first off, I think you could have a rush within the next few days, and then we've kind of got some chaos going on because everybody's trying to beat the crunch, and it sounds like there's some things that clearly need to be looked at, and Charlie recognizes that there's some things that in our first look we left out because we didn't know.
Right, and we looked at other counties, what they were doing, and we tried to be as comprehensive as we can, but
Yeah.
I think we put that out before. We're probably going to get caught on something, you know, and now here it is with this interconnection thing, and then also the amount of gravel that some of them are putting gravel, making roads out on.
Well, yeah, this is,
on the land.
how necessary is that? I mean, that's something that needs to be looked at during the moratorium process, how necessary is
And
that?
then, so I said, I am not opposed to this, because after the last meeting, we did have things that just came up that we do need to look at, but I hope then that during this time, we can also look at the zoning ordinance change at the same time, because Wright Hennepin made it real clear that this is an ideal spot. The one in Cokato, for everything that I've heard about it, is an ideal spot. But if we can make
Want to make it work for everybody.
Make it work for everybody, so.
Perhaps if there's an overlay district, and because it's an overlay district, then the entitlement issue doesn't matter, you know what I mean? And that's different than all the other components of the land use ordinance.
But we're still
where they're
considering
not
it's overlay
overlay districts. I mean, that's, I think, something that would be good for discussion, whether, since we're allowing it in these areas, but not maybe the entire agricultural area of the county, perhaps then it makes sense that the restricted parcels are
Because
utilized.
it is already a very small area where you can put these up.
Today, it's not. Well, it is in so much perhaps that...
Near the substation and things
Exactly.
like that, yeah.
But we don't restrict it near substations. There's nothing today that says, you know what, if you want to run a line 3 miles to the substation, we don't tell you you can't do it.
Mr. Chair?
Economics might prohibit it.
I can call for a vote. I mean, this is a discussion for another day.
Understood.
If I could just add one point of discussion here, just for the record, so that the board is aware, applications that have currently been filed with planning and zoning are still going to be processed through the ordinary course of what we do, but the resolution that you're adopting does direct staff to administratively deny any applications that are filed after the board adopts this resolution.
And you will, with relative quickness, come back to the board, I think, too, and with a proposal as far as how we're going to study this. I presume there's going to be a need to be a committee established. I would expect that would include someone from the planning commission, the county board, and some of these townships that we have here. And we know which townships have the greatest interest because they've been showing up at these meetings, so. But maybe you kind of come up with a blueprint and we can formalize something. I'd be willing to volunteer to participate, but if other people wanted it more so, I might step back. Charlie seems like he should be involved because he's on the planning commission. But, any further discussion?
I did just have one thing. If we do this committee, and this could be done in 6 months or 7 months, it doesn't have to be
For 3-4 months.
Oh, we can talk more about the timeline when we actually have the hearing, or the moratorium.
Good enough.
Any further discussion? That was a resolution?
Correct.
Roll call vote, was that in resolution format, correct?
Yes.
Roll call vote, Commissioner Burrell?
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous.
Mr. Chair, if we could get a motion to deny the proposed ordinance amendment at this point in time, I think that'd be in order.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, so that then could come up for further discussion in the moratorium process?
Yes, I think, I think it's
Okay.
appropriate just to deny it.
So
at this
it's-
point in time. We'll discuss it.
If we deny it without prejudice, how does that sound?
You can bring it back whenever you want.
It's our very own. We're the ones who are, so.
That's correct.
Okay. So Charlie, it doesn't mean that it's not allowed to be a discussion point in the, in the
moratorium talk or whatever.
in the moratorium talk and anything else. And
Okay, well, I certainly hope that it is.
Alex, did you make a motion?
He did, and I...
Mike made a motion to deny the amendment. Chris seconded the amendment. Further discussion. I guess further discussion would be that this very well is a discussion point of the other thing in the future.
So basically, we're denying it at this time.
Denying it this time. Doesn't mean we'll deny it in the next round, it doesn't mean we'll approve it the next round. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Mr. Chair, one last housekeeping matter. As I indicated in my memorandum, the earliest we can have a public hearing, given the publication deadlines that we have, and the 10-day required notice, I'd ask that the board schedule a public hearing to discuss a longer-term moratorium on May 10th, 2016 at 9:30 a.m.
Is there a motion to that effect? Motion by Potter, second by Wright. Any further discussion?
What time?
9:30,
So during our regular board meeting?
regular board meeting.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everybody, thank you for your attendance and your input.
Thank you.
And I don't know if this, I guess Franklin will have to decide if they just get rid of theirs.
They might not, yeah.
Fall underneath of the county's more
Right.
for this biggest process, or
We'll just leave it up to them, I guess.
they might save themselves a lot of headache by doing that.
There isn't a whole lot going on. Advisories, we'll take a quick break. Potty break. Movie break.
Folks, you guys want to go 8-9 minutes and finish this up, or take a break?
You're not talking to us, right?
No, talking to the 8-9 minutes and finish it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, Ways and Means Committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Ways and Means Committee met on April 13th, 2016. Members present, Sawatsky, Hewsome, and Lee Kelly. Others present, Greg Kreiser, Sue Virgin, and Susan Backus. And the discussion was the update on the codification or restatement of county ordinances. Mr. Kreiser provided an overview of the process that's required for the adoption of the updated and restated ordinances. There's going to be a public hearing on May 12th, 2016 at 7:30 right here in the county boardroom. The recommendation from the public hearing will be directed to the county board. If the recommendation is for the adoption, the board will adopt a resolution enacting the code of ordinances for the county with an effective date of July 1st, 2016. We had some discussion on the supportive care to frail and elderly or disabled, and Mr. Kreiser stated that he recommends we codify the ordinances first, then we can proceed with the ordinance, with the amendment, excuse me. And he also noted the ordinance right-of-way management currently located in Chapter 150 should be relocated to Chapter 50 under Public Works, and to republish and correct is going to cost approximately $1,200 to $1,600. And he also indicated that the county should be codifying any new or amended ordinances into the code once a year, and the cost is approximately $1,800 per page.
$18 per page.
What'd I
A lot of zeros.
1,800.
1,800.
Oh, yes. I'm
Zero.
yeah, boy. I'm using the last figure, $18 per page, thank you. And Susan Backus questioned the numbering of the new ordinances and the retention of the ordinances, and Kreiser stated that she should continue to number the ordinances as she has done. At the end of the year, any new ordinances would be provided to the codifier for the annual update. As to retention of ordinances, they are permanent records and will continue to be retained by the county. Discussion of creating a cross-reference table identifying locations of ordinances within the new document. Commissioner Sawatsky suggested that planning and zoning may be able to do this more efficiently and faster due to their familiarity with the ordinances. So we've got this different numbering, and they're familiar with the ordinances, so they're the department that really is able to do that more efficiently rather than hiring an outside source. Virgin questioned the placement of the codified ordinances on the website. Kreiser stated the ordinances will be available in both Word and PDF format. The recommendation is to move the ordinance right-of-way management from Chapter 153 to 51 and refer the proposed ordinance amendments to the Planning Commission for a public hearing on May 12th, 2016. And with that, I will move the minutes and the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Hewsome, second by Delline. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to follow up, just as part of discussion, as far as the estimate on creating the cross-reference table, came back at $1,700 to $2,100. So assuming the board is going to decline that offer and say it's more efficient for staff to do it.
Yeah,
but I just
I
wanted you
think
to
they
have
can
all
do
the
it.
information available to you.
I don't think, this doesn't take any expert at all. We could, it just takes someone to do the effort, and it doesn't take the expertise of some professional somewhere. It's really just, for lack of a better word, it's kind of some busy work, really, and someone that's going to kind of take their time and Yeah, I think we suggest to them in planning and zoning that they can maybe do this.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted you to have the complete information.
I don't know if we have anybody on workers' comp that we're trying to find something for them to do, that we could sit down and explain to them, this is what you need to do. You need to take this note, look at this one here and write on here, okay, section 106B is now section 337R, and go right across there, and, that'd be another option, but.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anyone currently, but I'll certainly look into the possibility.
If the gal at the front desk here could kind of do it, and her, it's like, here, just change these from here to there, it's probably 10 hours of work, if you can get it done sometime in the next 2-3 weeks. Something like that'd be another option, maybe.
No data practices in this, so that'd be good.
No data practices. I mean, it's important that it's done accurately, but it doesn't have to be done quickly, and
There's not a rush on this.
plenty of time for her to kind of look at it and kind of verify that she's got everything right. No one has to rush on it, but. Okay, did we vote on this yet?
No, because I started talking.
Okay, anything else? Any further other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. That was a big job, so thank you.
We're gonna get it done.
You're it.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm requesting authorization to attend it's not the 4th annual.
I was going to say, this has been going on for decades.
45th annual or 46th annual. I've attended this the last 2 years in a row, and you come out with a lot more team building with people that are more information. Hopefully this year I can get with Representative Bill Schuster, who's the chair of the Transportation Committee. Congressman Emmer said that he's going to try to get me in with the meeting with him. He's going to try really hard. The advantage is just, this will be more of the FAST Act that came in, another, the federal thing for the funding to help better understanding. Virgil went to a couple meetings on this to try to get a handle on it, but it needs to be said over and over again, and need to have people on the federal level to get this. So the advantage for us is 94, 55, 12, 25, and every other thing that comes on our doorstep here.
Mike, did you go to Washington already this year for something?
No.
Okay. For some reason,
A couple weeks will be the 94 coalition here, but they have their own thing, but NACO has theirs pretty quick. The large counties have theirs. This is the Transportation Alliance, which we're a member of. Instead of going with 94, which they already have a full contingent, I figured it'll give us a little extra exposure if I go out there with this group and still bring the 94 information forward.
I'll make a motion to approve him to go.
I'll second that.
Motion by Deloitte and second by Houston. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one's authorizing attendance to the Greater NSP Newcomer Experience, make a deeper dive into investors. We are, again, members of Greater MSP, and like Commissioner Barella said, we're kind of wondering what bang we're getting for the buck here, and I am pretty close to what's called considered. I want to make sure we get a project here. We've been members of this since the beginning. Let's just keep engaged, and it's down in Golden Valley at WSB's little university they have there. Great information, and just want to keep us on the map, and hopefully we can get some fruits from the expense that we've had since the inception of this.
I'll make a motion, we authorize attendance for the Greater MSP meeting in Golden Valley.
Is it just for Mike or for everybody?
Well, you can.
Allow everybody.
I'll do it for everybody.
Anybody who wants to.
It can't be very, what's the cost?
I don't think there is any.
Or is it free? Okay, so just, okay, yeah.
It's a free event for investors because we're members of it.
Okay.
It says it right.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Burrell, second by Houston. Any further discussion? I just wish that I had on tape recording the meeting that I attended about 6-7 years ago when Ted Mondale said that that we just want government money at the start here to get this thing rolling, and then private money's gonna take over on all this. We just need some seed money here, so. But I don't have that on tape, and I don't think anybody's admitting anymore that he said it, so. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Any brief advisory committee or advisory board updates?
Mr. Chair, I attended the Clearwater River Watershed District meeting, and it was brought up about the letter we had received from the Stearns County board chair, requesting us to look at, they have term limits for their managers that sit on the Clearwater River Watershed District. Apparently, they have term limits for all of their advisory committees, it sounds like. And Wright County and Meeker County do not. However, the county board has the option not to appoint managers if there's complaints from people. So what they advised me, the Board of Managers, said that they don't see a problem if Stearns County wants to continue their practice of having term limits, and Meeker County and Wright County, we can continue to do the way we have done. And this is my 4th year, and I've already reappointed one position once and the other position twice. So in that short time, we've had our own term limits. So anyway, I guess that perhaps I should put this on the agenda for next week to take some kind of action or item for consideration, so we can determine if we want to send them a letter.
Does Stearns have you're just a liaison, not a voting member, correct?
Correct.
Does Stearns who's Stearns liaison, and does that person ever attend these meetings?
No. I'm the only commissioner that's been at any meetings I've ever been at.
So I presume they've been invited to have liaisons, and just nobody's ever taken the time to show up, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
We have a few boards like that, that we're the only ones to show.
I see that too, and sometimes it's frustrating. I remember being on one, and they were trying to get things rolling, and an effort rolling, and I wasn't really a big advocate of myself, and at one point I finally said, I'm here from Wright County, and I'm pretty much a fence sitter on this thing, and the other 3 counties don't have anybody showing up. Why are we even doing this anymore? Why isn't this just going away? Because apparently they don't seem to be all that interested, and it's just, a couple of their staff people were kind of showing up, but it's like they had commissioners who were appointed, and they never showed up, and it was important enough, so, why do I have to keep showing up here, and I don't have these other commissioners that are...
Yeah, and
Now, in your case, it's different because we're a liaison, and they have a board there and that sort of thing, but you wonder why.
Yeah, and they do have taxing authority. I mean, I go to the meetings, and I, read the minutes for the meetings that I have not been able to attend, but, I mean, it's rare. I usually attend. And so, yeah, they're a whole separate entity, really. But, I mean, they're doing a lot of good things with their
So I guess our response
quality, et cetera.
next week would probably be then that we don't believe there needs to be a change. So if Stearns County wants it to be equal, that they should probably eliminate term limits on their person if they want it to be equal for all the counties.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing they did say in the letter, that they don't have a strong position.
Right.
So our position would be, we're not going to change it. And if you want to change it, we welcome that. If not, we're okay with that too.
Right.
Well, we haven't had a problem. Nobody's been continuous that long anyway.
No, in Wright County. But
So it's not an issue.
Yeah, and there was one person that was on it for quite, is there one that still is, or that one point the board chair?
he's the current board chair, and he's been on for,
I remember the board chair, I thought maybe he was a Wright County person, but okay.
he's Meeker.
And there's some advantages to having that historical perspective.
And we talked about that. I said, we certainly appreciate it coming on the Wright County board and having someone with historical perspective when we,
I think if everybody had been on there for 25 years and there'd been no turnover, then I would say, just a little turnover would be nice, but to have one that's got this perspective and others bringing new ideas, it sounds like they got a good mix.
and plus the fact that we're happy when people want to serve.
Yeah.
And if they have difficulty getting somebody, it's nice to have that person, so.
Anything else, Chris?
Did you want to mention the Highway 55?
You can go ahead and mention
Well,
that.
I don't know if you want to, I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but they're busy, Highway 55, with the County Road 116, County 115 at 55 in Medina. I guess that doesn't specifically affect us, but they're doing better lane alignment. Vicksburg will be closed. There's going to be double left for the eastbound. The railroad tracks is right there, so they've got problems like we do with a lot of our crossings in 55 with railroads right there. On County Road 114, the road that goes to Delano and...
No, 14.
Did I say 14?
That says 14.
I thought I said 14.
I thought I heard 114.
Okay.
You're adding zeros.
I'm adding zeros. I'm having problems talking today. And 55, and they're going to be doing the left turn lane, and there's going to be a detached right turn lane, which I'm not real sure why they call it a detached right turn lane. But that's going, I don't know when they said, I didn't write when they're going to be doing that, but that's happening.
Starting pretty quick.
Well, does it go right off, kind of like a freeway then, more like as opposed to being right next to it, and that's what it means by detached then?
It's got like a striping and rumble strips and what have you. The pavement
It's not right next to that lane.
not right next to that lane. It's going to be, so you get a better sight line when you're...
Better sight line,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I would think like a freeway, they have detached.
Right.
Yep.
Well, they have, you mean exit lane, like a turn lane, almost like an exit lane than maybe
Going
more.
south, from 55 east going south on 14, we'll have the right turn lane. Now they've had so many accidents there.
Yeah, people pull out all the time.
But they have a detached one on 35 as you're coming by Hants Berry Farm there, it just kind of curves.
Yeah, that would be considered a
Merges in with
detached.
the road down.
I guess I don't
Imagine that's what they're doing.
I wasn't envisioning a raised median at all, but
I wasn't
they
either,
could possibly
yeah.
get that, but most of them that are detached like that because they got a wide bituminous with rumble strips and striping there, so you are detached from the driving lane. It's not, you're not right up against them, but it could be the other way.
And the Highway 25 and 55, I asked about the roundabout there because I've had a lot of people wondering how that's going to work. And they assure me that it should work quite well, even with the railroad tracks there. They're going to have, with the extra left turn lanes in there, they feel it's going to be efficient, so.
Well, time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. In County Road 3 at Highway 55 in Annandale, the signal is going to interconnect with they're going to have on the south side of the railroad tracks, the signal is going to interconnect with the traffic lights, so hopefully that's not going to be a problem for the trains going through there. There's a lot going on there too, so, and that's going to start in August, I believe.
Yeah, that one's a little
Yep,
later.
the funding will come through in July.
Well, if you want to see a detached turn lane, I think St. Michael Albertville is home to the largest one in the state. That being the one off of I-94 there.
Oh, the collector distributor.
Yeah.
That's
Wouldn't you call that a long detached turn lane there?
Yeah, they have the fancy words.
What is that thing, about a mile and a half long or something?
It's
Is it
pretty
really?
long.
So,
Oh, and a lot of people don't know it's there either in the wintertime. They go right over top of that.
Right the hill, right back down, yeah.
so there's a lot going on with projects this summer, which will be good to get them done.
Mike?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Continuing on with the AMC Policy Transportation Road Show. I've been around the different parts of the state. This Friday I'll come up to be in Brainerd. More to come on that, just more awareness of what's going on, how we can do it. Last Tuesday, we attended a crime lab meeting, some of us did. And I did get assurances from Julie Brasted from Anoka and Felix Schmiesing from Sherburne County that the funding formula amendments that we've been looking at are definitely going to be on the table and discussed and fully vetted. So I'm going to kind of hold them to that. No, Commissioner Swatsky won't be there, but I will be, I hopefully will be there. Hold them to that. Because they said they were going to, and now let's follow through with this.
If you're not going to be there, trust me, I will.
Well, you'll be there. Good. Good.
And
Next.
also that the commissioners will be part of the,
Yes, commissioners are part of the discussion, which is good. Last Wednesday, I with Karen Punsap from the Great River Regional Libraries Store. We attended Library Legislative Day at the Capitol. We met with a half a dozen different legislators, and we ran into another half a dozen that I introduced Karen and staff to them to help, because they're more support for library issues, part of it the funding cycle. That's inconsistent. We need to have a little bit more clarity on that. Last Thursday, Regional Active Living, again, it was one of those other things, I was the only commissioner to be there. Our staff was well represented there, and those are hit and miss. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. They're coming down to the more the fruition of all the things they've been working on to interconnect all the trails in the Quad Counties, which Quad Counties with us is Wright County, Sherburne County, Benton, and Stearns County. Make sure that there are all trail connections and all that. That's part of that livable community thing too, which is a little different component. Maybe it works better in St. Cloud than here, but it's part of the component to make it available. Christine talked about the 55 Coalition. That, like I say, a lot of good discussion there. Hopefully 2017 we can get some movement towards some lane expansion, because this year I don't think the legislature is going to do much of anything. And Friday afternoon they attended the AMC board meeting in St. Paul and went through that whole litany, and I also attended the board of directors orientation meeting, which I have a 3-ring binder with their whole board of directors rules, concepts, everything else in there back for everybody to see. Mr. Chair.
Construction started today on County Road 75, Highway 25 intersection in Monticello.
Okay, good.
So I now got 2 detours to contend with on my way here each day.
Yep.
Other than that, I guess I don't have too much to report.
I gotta go to the bathroom really bad, so I'm gonna, other than the reason I wasn't at the Tri-County Lab, I met with Parks, surveyors, and Extension out at existing Public Works building, and we have some different ideas that we'll be presenting here in the future.
And Mr. Chair, I didn't have anything on board, but I would like to pass on my thanks to everyone. When my mom passed away a week ago, and we got a lot of support from employees at the county, cards, phone calls, well wishes, and prayers, so I want to thank everybody for that.
Charlie, how many years did your mom live with you?
6 years, I think.
So Charlie and his wife took care of his mom for the last 6 years. That's quite a, she was in, had some challenges there too, so that was quite an accomplishment.
She was 97?
97, yeah.
97.
Just turned 97 in February, so.
90 or 96 grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Well, it's probably 60, but when they're married and stepkids, we counted up over 90, my sister and I did, so.
Oh.
And you probably left a couple out.
We thought it was closer to 100, but we wanted to play it safe.
So now that's grandkids?
And
great-grandkids. And great-grandkids, okay. Any great-greats?
No, I don't think we do.
No.
So anyway, but I want to thank everyone that gave support to the family.
Life well lived, huh?
Well, the sad part was that she wasn't able to spend that $5 my mother-in-law gave her for her birthday.
We decided we're going to put that towards some masses at church, so.
Okay, there being no further business, we are adjourned at 11:25 a.m.